And hello, everybody, and welcome to Magical Journeys Paranormal Files. This is number 8 in the series, and we will be going over today the story of the Amityville Horror. Now, before we get started with that, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping. First of all, let me just point out the major thing, which is magicaljourney.com, the website, where you can find all of the information you need for social media links. There's some special videos of guest appearances I've done on other podcasts and so forth. A lot of good information on there, including the most important thing now up on there that I just added, which is magical merch. So go to magicaljourney.com to find my Facebook profile page, group pages, because there's a page for Magical Journey and the Paranormal Files both. You can find all my social media like Tumblr, X, TikTok while we still have it, and a whole lot more on there. So magicaljourney.com. And let me, while I'm thinking about that, do this scroll so you guys will have that up there. Now, today, we're going to discuss probably one of the most notorious hauntings of all times. This haunting took huge precedence in popular culture in the 1970s and 80s. It was thoroughly investigated by Ed and Lorraine Warren, among other people, and it's notoriously, arguably, it is Long Island's most notorious residence. I'm talking about 112 Ocean Avenue in Amityville. It's the book that spawned, or the story that spawned the Amityville Horror, the 1977 book, and the 1979 movie, which details the true story of George and Kathy Lutz and their family. The family was only in the house for 28 days before leaving abruptly one night, leaving all their positions and everything. They literally were like, I'm out, and they took off. The 3-story home was originally built in the early 1920s. I don't even want to say the name of the family that built it. I'm going to slaughter the name. They removed a small cottage from the lot, and then Jesse Prudy, who was the builder, built the 5-bedroom 4-bathroom home. It had Gabriel roof with 2 quarter circle windows overlooking Ocean Avenue. This home was sold in the 1960s from the family's daughter to John and Mary Riley, who lived there for 5 years before they sold the house to Ron and Laura Louise. Why am I slaughtering names today? DeFeo. That was in June of 1965. So I was actually 4 years old when that house sold. I'm telling you my age. The DeFeo family had 4 children at the time of the purchase of the house: Ronald Jr., Dawn, Allison, Mark, and one on the way. Their son, John, was born later that year. So um, Ron Sr. dubbed the house High Hopes, and there was a sign that actually swung in the yard at front yard of the house that they put the name High Hopes on. Um, there was definitely this was their dream home basically for the four children of them. But patterns of abuse and control behavior um, toward Louise and the children was definitely part of the story. Unfortunately, with the DeFeo family, and then 9 years later, of course, there was the horrific incident that resulted from the abuse and control by the father. In the early morning hours of November the 13th, 1974, 6 members of the DeFeo family were found murdered inside the home. Ron Sr. and Louise each had been shot twice. The 4 children, Dawn, Allison, Mark, and John, had each been shot once. Their bodies were discovered the following evening by the only survivor of the family's members, and that was Ronald DeFeo Jr. He was found guilty on all 6 counts of murder. In December 1975, he was sentenced to 6 consecutive terms of 25 years to life. Ronald Jr. Expired in the jail. He never got out. Around the same time, the former DeFeo member home was sold to George and Kathy Lutz. They moved their 3 children in on December they moved in with their 3 children on December the 18th, 1975, according to the story. The paranormal activity literally started the first day they moved in. And let me just say, like, the story, if you read the book and you do the research, it reads like a compendium of paranormal, literally, like everything that could possibly happen as a paranormal manifestation seemed to happen in that house, and then some. That's one of the reasons why there's a lot of speculation that the story was really a hoax and never really happened. Jason Anson is the person who wrote the Amityville Horror. There was things like mysterious green ooze that was slamming down the walls and toilet bowls, turning completely black inside. The appearance of a pig with beady red eyes and a faceless figure with demon horns and white peaked hood. The family reached their breaking point on January the 14th of 1976, less than a month after moving in, and fled the home, leaving all their belongings behind. Following a paranormal investigation conducted in March, the Lutzes returned to the house. Or they returned the house rather. They to the bank and they moved back to California. Despite a Newsday report debunk a majority of their story, the Amityville Horror sparked a public fascination with the home that persists to this day. Now, I do want to say this. It was like, honestly, like I remember my first experience with reading the book was probably like in eighth grade or so. And just the immense amount of um, that was sparked with this story. Like, I mean, there was like the house was like it was infested, had an infestation of flies as part of the manifestation. Things would move, furniture would move. The little girl was talking to um, one of the little girls was talking to uh, people that nobody, excuse me, nobody else could see. There was just a lot of things that happened in that house that seemed like very sensationalized. Uh, George was becoming obsessed. He would sit by the fire. He kept the fire blazing all the time. He would sit by the fire, claiming he was freezing. He kept having a lot of what I would call hallucinations, of things going on in the house that weren't really going on. A lot of, like, he got to the point where he was becoming aggressive toward the family. And it's very interesting because a lot of people pointed out how closely George Lutz resembled Ronald DeFeo Jr. So that was very interesting. Ronald DeFeo Jr., his story upon his arrest was very interesting because he claimed that he was hearing voices telling him to unalive his family. Um, there was a lot of stuff going on. One of the things that they did not uh, really go into about his story, though, was that he was abusing substances and had a heavy problem with alcohol. So a lot of the stuff that he was saying was kind of brushed to the side because people were like, okay, so this is him having another psychotic event because of his addiction problems. Um, Defoe said he did not remember going into his family's rooms and unaliving them. He did not remember any of that. The only thing he remembers is seeming to come home and find his family all laying face down in the bed and they had been shot. That was his story. In April of 1977, the house was bought for $55,000. Now, this was a pretty good size house, and it literally sold for almost nothing. When the house was bought by the Cremati family, Jim and Barb Cremati, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, they were not aware that the book was about to be published. By November, they had been bombarded so many times by unwanted visitors, they decided to change the address of the house. This, however, did nothing to stop the curious. The onlookers were just flooding to the house on a daily basis. In an interview with Newsday, the Cromarties revealed how bad the situation had gotten, saying that because of so many visitors came late at night, they were barely able to sleep. Once a man stood on their front lawn playing a bugle at 3 a.m. Another occasion, someone left human excrement on the porch. Around the holidays, the family decorations were stolen. The home's horror house reputation even followed their 14-year-old to school, where classmates would harass her, ask her repeatedly if she'd seen any ghosts. It was just a bad experience. By December of 1978, the constant barrage of visitors proved to be too much for the family, who decided to move out and put the house on the market for $100,000. By this time, the Amityville Horror, starring James Brolin and Margaret Kidder, hit theaters in July of 1979. As far as I know, I'm not sure if the house was ever sold and bought or not. It was just, and it gets even better. I mean, that Ocean Avenue was littered with empty beer bottles, popcorn boxes, and other trash left behind by onlookers. It literally, there was disrespect to like every house and homeowner on the street. So it was like the whole neighborhood was getting just basically harassed by people who were wanting to go see the horror house on Amityville. As crowds grew larger, police details were hired and paid overtime, actually, to kind of keep things down a little bit. There had been ideas thrown out there about ways to kind of like appease the crowd, so to say, running bus tours, charging admission to see the house. None of these ideas were approved out of respect for the DeFeo family. I keep saying Defoe, it's DeFeo. I don't know what's up with me and pronunciation of words today. It's been like that all week. Having given up the idea for selling the house, the Cromarties eventually moved back in, fighting the home's reputation. They accepted speaking engagements throughout New York and everywhere they could to share the real history of the house. In February 1982, they reached a settlement with a publishing company to have the true story removed from all future printings of the book. When the family sold the house on August 1987, things had quieted down significantly. The new interest spiked every time the movie played on TV. So there was a lot of ebbing and flowing of interest in the house. It caused, it's really sad to think about. I mean, this was a beautiful house, a beautiful neighborhood. I'm sure the family was quite, just your normal average family that moved in. So the house eventually did sell to Peter and Jenny O'Neill. I want to say it was Jenny, maybe it's Jenny O'Neill. The O'Neills purchased the home for $325,000 and swapped out the now infamous high windows for square ones. They also filled in the ground pool in June of 1997 after living there for 10 years. The O'Neills sold the house to Brian Wilson for $310,000. in the 13 years that he lived there, Wilson fixed up the bathhouse or the boathouse, add a second sunroom to the backside of the house. He sold it on September 2010 to Caroline and David Deontay. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Now, get this. The house then sold for $950,000. The Deontays lived there for 6 years before they put the home on market with an asking price of $850,000. When it sold in March of 2017, it went for $605,000. Not a single owner since the Lutzes has reported experiencing paranormal activity in the home. It's interesting that there was a drop from that was a significant increase from $950,000 dropping all the way down to $605,000. So after the Lutz family moved out, there was no more reports of paranormal activity in the house. Actually, there was a lot of claims that the Lutz family had made up the entire story. There have been multiple spin-off movies to the Amityville Horror, The Curse of Amityville, all these other kind of movies. There's just been a ton of them. If you do a search for the Amityville Horror universe, I'm sure you're going to find a ginormous list of movies. Like I said, this was during the 70s and 80s. This story was pop culture, like all over the place. Everybody was talking about the Amityville Horror. Everybody knew about the dynamic pig. And when there's a famous photo of the ghostly child peeking in around the door that popped up from a paranormal investigation. The number of people who investigated the house, there were several major, and when I say major, I mean it was like kind of a for lack of a better term, kind of like almost like a media circus surrounding the paranormal investigations in the house. So many times you had a lot of people doing the whole paranormal investigation, holding seances and whatever. Ed and Lorraine Warren, like I said, that was one of their big stories. That was kind of one of the things that catapulted them, in a sense, into the public eye. Was the Amityville Horror investigation. There was just a lot of things that I want to look and see right quick. Let me see if I can find some of the quotes from Ed and Lorraine about diabolical forces are formidable. These forces are eternal and they exist today. The fairy tale is true. The devil exists, God exists, and for us as people, our very destiny hinges upon which one we elect to follow. That is a direct quote from Ed and Lorraine Warren, not necessarily about the Amityville Horror, but definitely a very important quote from them about evil in general. I'm very curious, though, to see if there was anything that was ever said. I know that Lorraine gave at least one interview about Amityville, and I'm really not sure the Conjuring 2 movie touches on the Amityville case. If you've seen the Conjuring universe movies, I've seen all of the Conjuring series so far, and yeah. One of the things that Lorraine Warren told CNN in 2005, when she was asked what it was like to go into the Amityville Horror House, she said, "Evil. It's a personification of evil." So, there was a lot of things that was said about the house having a very dark and evil presence. It was believed that the house may have been built on, an ancient Indian burial ground. There was a lot of speculation as to what the problem was with the house, if indeed there was a problem with it. At one point, the yard was filled with statues of saints and crosses and stuff like that. So, again, just in closing about the Amityville Horror, I do want to say that for me, this is still very much an open investigation. I have not closed this file yet, and probably won't for some time, because the verdict is still out for me as to whether or not this was a hoax or not. But I will say this in closing: do expect follow-up on this case as I find more stuff. And yeah, meanwhile, remember, every Thursday I will be dropping a new episode of the Paranormal Files. Please don't forget to like, share, comment, and if you have not already, shame on you. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And may your journey always be magical.
I've waited for so long to see when you come back to me. Through the wars and battles that were lost, we're born again, it's you and me. The rest is history. Past lives. We must have been something in our past lives.